So, battle my little notes around. Yeah, so
Hey, I got
go ahead.
a theme song for you.
Oh, yeah. You seem to be muted, which uh, I'm sending you an ask to unmute message.
There. Okay, now I got a little song for you here.
Okay.
This could be your theme song.
Boxes, little boxes, all the same. There's a green one and a pink one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
Well, we are going to transcend
That was
those.
a little Pete Seeger.
Yeah, of course. We're going to thank you.
But I've always loved that song.
Yeah, it's lovely. And it's actually written by, I can't think of her name, the woman folk singer of that time, or even older than him, who I can't think of at the moment. But yeah. Well, we're going to transcend those boxes. We're going to individuate within our yellow boxes today. So, greetings and so this is a chance to do a little. My goals for this class is to offer. Trying to figure out what to say for my introduction. To offer an intellectual structure and a map, which is potentially cumbersome and hopefully useful, and certainly grand, but also to offer a chance for building a little community of support, and also to explore different ways that I can support and contribute to, but also that we can share with each other ways that we have figured to live joyful, grateful, meaningful lives in a very challenging and difficult time, and one that's not where the joyfulness and all that is combined with being very involved in reality and is based on both accepting is not quite the word, but knowing the reality we're in, and at the same time finding ways to live in joy and peace, and to, if we're fighting for nature, then we surely owe it to ourselves to fully participate in and to fully accept and gratefully use let nature resource us in our lives. So as part of that, this is now that we've got a little bit of a context from the first two classes, chance for us to say a little more about ourselves, introduce ourselves. And as I mentioned, the kinds of things I'm interested in is what brings you here? What would you hope to get out of this? How do you see yourself participating in making the world more like you wished it was? How can we support each other in that? How can we support you in that? How do you resource yourself? And sharing that. And so that's one big part. And so to live meaningful lives, and that I've sort of tried to summarize that as to live in our full belonging to and one big piece of that, as most of you know, and I think will come up, is grief. And one of the things I'm doing is leading a grief group for an organization called Winter Spring.
Taking a class, so I gotta get back to it.
Say that. Say what? Oh no, you're talking. Got it.
Organization called what?
It's called Winter Spring, and it is now. It's a volunteer organization, but it's been taken under the wing of what's one of the big health organizations here. I can't think of the name of it. It'll come to me. It's a Latin name.
Asante,
What?
Asante,
No,
Asante.
no.
Regions?
No, the one that started off as a Hispanic, has Hispanic, La Clinica.
Electric.
So La Clinica has taken that, has offered resources and put it under its wing, which is, and yeah, so anyway, but yeah, so I've learned a lot from doing that group, facilitating that group. And so grief is going to be an important piece that I want to talk about before we're done. And you guys may address that yourselves or not when you introduce yourselves. And so my introduction, I'm just going to make a very short part because I'm going to do a more in-depth one when we get to talk about grief. And my short introduction is, first of all, I'm 400 years old. Well, no, I turned 78 just the other day. And I've done a lot of different things. And those include, and some of this, just from the blurb in the catalog, but some of this includes being very involved activist in the full-time in the 60s, 70s, late 60s and 70s movement, working for something called Liberation, among other things, Liberation News Service, which was a service for the left and underground press in the country, functioned as an AP for the left press and the underground press. And then I eventually, but quite late, ended up going to graduate school in economics and environmental economics. And I did that because I think economics is fundamental to understanding what's going on in the world, and what I already knew it, but discovered in more detail, was that what they teach in economics class is essentially the ideology of capitalism. And there was a whole movement of young economists who were coming into that from a very different point of view, but that we were definitely very much on the outskirts of that. I hit a midlife crisis, which was partly about the fact that there was a point when it didn't look like the political change I was hoping to happen was going to happen very soon. And so just focusing on political change was no longer sufficiently, didn't sustain me well enough by itself. And that happened. I think there was when in the 60s, you'd say to people, everything's all screwed up and really bad. People would say, oh, no, really? And that was like a radical thing if you can convince them that the system wasn't working. By the 80s, if you said to someone, the system is really all screwed up and unfair and blah, 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 they'd say, yeah, so just criticizing the system was not sustaining anymore. So I had a midlife crisis, which included a very serious back injury, which turned out okay, but and death of my father, and finding that I couldn't make a commitment to have a child in the relationship I was in, and being physically injured seriously for the first time in my life. And so with that, I got a lot of, I started with a lot of body work, of which there was really cool body work around, but pretty much all of them said, you're kind of type A, you kind of try to power through everything. And we're not sure that's working for you. Nobody said that exact sentence, but that's what I got from it. And so I just realized I needed to have a kind of a deeper, be more deeply sourced, have a deeper faith of some sort. I will say that spirituality for me, maybe for a lot of people, has always been a fallback position. When everything's going great, I don't bother with it. But I knew I needed to drink from a deeper well at that point. And that involved me then getting into a program to train me to be a therapist that was a body oriented and very, very interesting and sort of groundbreaking therapy training. And that eventually led to me moving up here and working for 20 years or more as for Jackson County Mental Health. And I've since retired, and so one of the issues for me was that in the therapy circle or in our group, we had a very wonderful and intimate team. But when I would start putting what we were doing in a political context, people would, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but people's eyes would start rolling and saying, that's not what we're doing here, really. We were, but they didn't articulate it in political or economic terms. And when I would talk more about anything that sounded spiritual to my more political friends, they would start rolling their eyes. So integrating those, the political and the personal, or however you want to phrase that, has sort of been the path that I've been on. And one of the things that happened was, since the last 20 years we're working in a very intimate level with individuals and families, I had really no outlet. And so I had a lot of stuff I was accumulating to say, but saying it in our staff meetings, didn't really quite fit, or going to someone else's workshop and saying something didn't really, I never had a mandate, essentially, for publicly putting out what I put together for myself. So that's new. So in my retirement, that's kind of new, is to say, to claim the opportunity to speak publicly about, be public about, to talk to the public about things that I care about. So, and one of the things that's happened, and I'm almost done with this part of my introduction. One of the things that's, okay, so after I retired, I kind of was putting together my own integration and not really doing a lot of seeing what other people had done. And then in just the last 3 years, I've sort of come out of that, feeling that I was centered in what I'd put together for me. And part of me was like going like, was in grief that the political movement, what in the terms that I had been involved in it in the 70s, that robust, politically pointed movement wasn't there in the way that I wanted it to be. I wished it was, and being nostalgic for that, being in grief that the world is so different from what we were hoping it would be by now. We wouldn't have imagined that it would be like this at that point. But it's also true that in coming out of that, I was always part of the movement that included the women's movement and the personal growth and all that stuff. I was not in the wings of the movement that were purely about class struggle. But I did believe in class struggle and was trying to integrate those as best I could. So, but what I'm saying now is I am just in this process of discovering how much wonderful stuff has been happening and has been cooking, even if it hasn't come to the kind of political head that it was. And that we are actually resourced now, not just to be disappointed that it ain't the movement it was, but to realize that we can have a much richer and more grounded movement starting right here now. So I'm pretty excited about that. And a lot of the intellectual structure of the class is, I hope, and I think to some degree out of date, because it's about countering what I still think, what is still the hegemonic, orthodox, empowered paradigm, and criticizing it. But the danger is that in that structure, I think I've corrected that, but I felt in the earlier versions of it that I wasn't acknowledging enough or involving enough all of the really wonderful stuff and movement and the riches of it that have been happening and being birthed gradually and ongoingly within and in resistance to the dominant structure. And so, like when I talk to my 28-year-old son a lot about my pretty polarized way of looking at it, he'll say, "You're really caricaturing that. The evolutionary theory doesn't think that anymore. And you're arguing with an old view or something like that." I still think it's more useful than he thinks, to situate it in that context. But that is both a danger, might be a limitation of how I'm talking about stuff. But it's also exciting to me to really want to be acknowledging the relevance and importance of all the good stuff that's happened. That's me for now. I have a lot to say about grief, and some of that will include a bunch of my personal further introduction of myself. But I'm kind of ready to hear from other folks.
I guess I could go next. I guess you can see my name, Kathy Stonefeld. I'm not sure. Do we all see each other's names?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I actually made notes, but I don't know where they are right now. Tax week, But I moved to Ashland recently from California. And I lived in a lot of places before then, but I've lived most of my life from 10 years old on up in the Bay Area. And the reason I joined the course or class belonging to the earth and each other is that, I've left relationships that I've known for decades and my closest, dearest friends that we know so well, each other, and accept each other and love each other, despite our strength and our weaknesses. And so I want to build community here. And I belong to the YMCA, and I go and I do, yoga and meditation and Zumba classes, but everybody seems like they've lived here a long time. They go home to their spouse and their children and their grandchildren. And I'm here by myself. And slowly, making some friendships that are a little deeper. But I also think we're in very interesting times. I would say probably through the centuries, there's always been very difficult times, better and worse. But I do want to be a part of building a community with things that matter to me as well. And the environment matters. I'm in charge of recycling in the area where I live recently, and I care a lot about health. So I spent 15 years with Hill Physicians Medical Group, working with doctors and nurses, and I was a health coach. And before that, I was a nutritionist for 3 years, teaching at the nursing school. And before that, I was in media for 15 years, working for NBC and KTVU in the Bay Area and KATU in Portland briefly. So I have two main careers, the media, and I wanted something, maybe it's my midlife crisis. I didn't want to be so involved in advertising things to make people buy things to make themselves feel better about themselves and their life. And that's why I went into holistic health education. And I'm also very interested in bridging different ideas. Like I certainly have my own, especially about health and nutrition and what we're doing to the earth and the soil. But I'm very interested in learning deep listening, bridging, how I can tell a very brief story and then I'm actually done. I'm reading this book called
we got plenty of time, so go ahead.
Well, I'm reading this book called Climate Courage. And in that, the author told a story that he was with another person. They were very politically different, But they started talking about gardening, a place they could connect. One of them knew about composting, one knew about something else, pollinating. And they started to have this conversation. And then after they had this conversation about something they both connected to, they were willing to listen to each other and their political views much easier. So I'm in a place where I want to explore that. And it's sad to me that we've had this great political divide where we've had leadership that has tried to divide and conquer rather than having people listen to each other, and that every life matters. Black, Hispanic, Chinese, Japanese, you and I, whatever we are, we all matter, and to listen to each other. And what I could get out of the class from my notes is just, if I'd like to work on the deep listening and being authentic, I'm done with putting off any kind of image I had to do in sales and advertising, and just be authentic people, being willing to trust and open to each other. And if people that have lived in Ashland longer have ideas on where you go to get involved in the environment, such as, of course, Environmental Day is coming up, but I'm exploring where to hike and trails. But if people have things that have made them happy, and then also with the challenges with the earth as each other, what are some of the, I'd hope that the class would bring out what are some of the challenges as each person sees them, and what are some of the solutions, and if not a solution, a shift towards a healthy planet and healthy people. And yeah, I'd like to discuss some of those issues, because I'd rather think about the positive. It doesn't do any good to just say, oh my God, there are all these challenges. So that's it.
Lovely.
I have a question. It looks to me, I'm taking this class on Zoom because I have a low vision and I can't get to the center. But are there people in the in the classroom now too that we're listening to this, or are we mostly Zoom people?
It's all Zoom. There's no live version of this class right now.
Oh, there is. Okay. One of my suggestions, when we first moved to Ashland about 14 years ago, I joined Ollie. And when we were all in the classroom, that's where you meet people who have interests like you, because they're taking classes like you are. The art classes are great, but after the classes, and I think that's one of the great things about Ollie is meeting people. We did not know a soul when we moved to Ashland. We had lived on a boat for 14 years. We were up on Vancouver Island. And my husband and I just cruised around and went to Alaska in the summers and had a wonderful time. But then when we started having grandchildren, we decided we needed to be closer to the family who lived in the Bay Area. But we were so used to being in nature that we wanted a place like Ashland where we could get out and hike and be on the water. And we joined Ollie, and we met many good friends at Ollie. And from that, you can join, classes. I joined the Ashland Emergency Food Bank to help people. I did that for 10 or 11 years until my vision gave out for me. So I think,
what was that, Ashland? What food?
The Ashland Emergency Food Bank.
Thank you.
And that is over near the Holiday Inn across I-5. And they're open 5 days a week with all volunteers. And we serve hundreds of people each month, giving food away. And it is not part of any of our government facilities. The people in Ashland support it. And we do not we say, if you need food, come. And we feel like 98% of the people who come do need food. And there might be a couple who don't need it, but still need somebody to take care of them. And so Ashland, and they can use volunteers. It's changed tremendously since COVID, but they need people. And that was a good connection for me with people, that being able to give food. And we'd go into the food bank and they'd be, no, I don't need this, save that for somebody else. I have enough cornflakes this week. And to know that the people in Ashland care about each other. That is a wonderful experience. And I think I found that here.
You know, we can, first of all, I'm planning to in the future do these live. But we can also get together if we want. And we've done that in some of the other classes. We could go have a picnic or, you know, whatever, meet in person. So we can see about setting that up.
Good idea.
I think we should go to the bar and karaoke.
You haven't heard me sing, I guess.
Yeah, no, I would be booed off the stage very quickly. But anyway, I think all of Vern's suggestions were great. You know, we moved here 2.5 years ago too, from Nebraska, and that was right in the middle of COVID. But just to give you a little history, I was a dentist in Nebraska for 40 years, and I grew up in a community in Colorado that was mostly Hispanic, which is really kind of amazing, you know, because I got to witness the beauty of their extended families. And, you know, if you were at that house when it was dinner time, by God, you were sitting down and eating.
Yes.
And so they were, you know, gracious, kind people. So I was really surprised when I went to college and I found out that where I lived, everybody thought it was a ghetto, you know, and you know, and I never thought that. You know, I didn't know any better, but it gave me an appreciation for minorities and about how wonderful they are, and in many ways, you know, and how they have their own community within the larger community, and they're generally supportive of each other most of the time, you know, and there's always the bad eggs. But anyway, that experience was good for me, and then I went into service, and then I went back to college, all that stuff, and I grew up. I was stationed in San Francisco and in the Coast Guard, and you know, got to witness the way the service people were treated by the free love people, and how you know, how bad it felt to think, you know, hey, you know, I'm doing this for our country, and now you guys are mocking me. And I don't think they meant it. I think they were just uninformed. And but I know when you go to what was it called, Fillmore, you know, everybody be sitting on the floor in the Fillmore and they're passing joints, and they'd always go around you if you had short hair. Like, wait a minute. But anyway, it was an interesting experience. But through all that and through practicing dentistry, you know, I started dentistry when, you know, interest rates were sky high when I got out of school, and so I was really broke for quite a few years. You know, trying to pay back college and doing all that stuff. And of course, when you start practice in a small town, well, it was 28,000. It wasn't that small, but you get all kinds. You get the guys who want drugs. You get this. You get that. But I had a whole lot of lower income people, and I developed an understanding and a love for them. You know, just a real compassion. And I've always worked with them. You know, I've always taken Medicaid, all that stuff. And you know, I didn't make as much money. Man, I slept well at night. And all that, I had some spiritual awakenings, took some classes, and kind of I was raised a Catholic. And please don't take this as a put down of anything, but I grew away from the church, you know, and because I didn't like the institutionalized aspect of it. And, you know, the spirituality turned out to be totally different from religious spirituality. It's the same, you know, at some point. But when somebody comes in and says, oh, this is what you got to do, this is how you got to do it, then it's kind of like, oh, no, you know, we don't need the structure. That's in us. in all of us. You know, we've all got the same chance to be spiritually developed. And so from all that, you know, like, please don't let me upset anybody, but you know, like when Trump became president, then my whole thought was,
You know, we're not
I-
allowed to say anything negative about Trump in this class. That's one of the rules. I thought that was unspoken, so.
I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying that I decided
So I
my
trust
role
you
in-
know that I'm kidding, and I'm one of my whole one of the classes will be a ruthless dissection of Trump for you, for not just for the pleasure of it, but for its educational value. Anyway, go ahead.
what I decided then was that my only move that I could do to make the world a better place would be to be really kind, to be aware that I was being kind, and try and be nice to people and not judge them. You know, not like, you know, the guys that run around with the big flags in the back of their pickup truck
Yeah.
and like think, oh, you're a jerk. You know, instead be like, hey, you know, probably if I talked to this guy, if we were standing on the corner chatting with each
Mhm.
other, we'd probably like each other.
Mhm.
And so I tried really hard. Sometimes it's really, really, really hard. You know, when somebody's being a jerk, to say, okay, now wait a minute. There's a person in there. If I can reach to that person,
Yeah.
my life's gonna be better, and their life's gonna be better. And I don't try and change them. I just want to be nice to them.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my spiel.
Mm. Thank you.
So that's sweet. Thank you so much. Well, so a theme already is not only people, you know, caring about in depth about what's important to them, but a real desire to be able to find a way to communicate with other people and not, and whatever the glue that bridges that is, of which I think kindness is, you know, the best.
You know, I did have one other thing
Yeah.
for Kathy. You know, I started taking water classes at Hawaii, and they're water exercise. And generally, I'm the only man in that class. But I love these women. They are unfiltered. You know, I mean, like nothing that's coming out of their mouth. And,
Nothing like
and so
hot
I've got a
not
lot-
water.
and sometimes there's one gal in the class told the instructor that the instructor told us to do something, and she said, "Wait, I didn't understand it. Can you go through that again?" And so the instructor did, and when she got done, she said, "I'm not going to do that." And the instructor said, "Okay."
Thank you, Jim. I wanted to look at the classes. Now I'll go with great expectations.
You'll probably see me there.
Hope so.
One of the books that I've recently been reading with the book club is, and I will get the author, but it's called This is Happiness. And the author is Nigel somebody, but it's written about Ireland back in the 50s and how those people lived and how they related to each other and how they found happiness even though there was not a lot of wealth or education. And my husband and I, as I said, we traveled a lot. We were in the Bahamas on our boat, and we could see that the people didn't have a lot of money, but that we felt very safe there. We could leave things out on our boat and know that they would not be taken. But those people were happy. You know, they just took care of their families, and they were just happier than we are, I think, sometimes. But happiness is what This is Happiness is a book where we each have to look at our own lives every day and say, you know, what's happy today, or what have we found happy? And it's not going to be every day. It's not going to be happy. It might be just a little sliver of something that we can change to make it happier.
Yeah, it's paying attention to the slivers, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I know a lot of people do gratitude journals, which is something you wake up each day. And And I have a friend whose husband is in hospice now. And we were talking the other day, and I said, well, how's he doing? And she said, okay. I always wake him up and I say, what are 3 good things you're about today? And he'll always say, you are the best thing about today. She's the caregiver, and that helps both of them. And that chokes me up too. But, yes. And I think relating to people on a one-to-one basis makes a difference. As we were saying, it's not just looking at the big picture, it's finding somebody that you can look at and say, hey, there's something inside there that we can both relate to.
Okay, I'd like to go next. Let's see. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Nina.
Hi. Okay, when I knew we were going to introduce ourselves today, it really made me kind of nervous. I have a whole bunch of notes because I've been working on it, and it's been quite a good process for me. And I appreciate everything that has been shared so far. I was not going to talk about my childhood background, but I am going to mention it. I grew up in a brutal, horrible, dysfunctional situation for my entire childhood and also my marriage. And I was 28 years old before I ever relaxed. And when my muscles relaxed for the first time, I thought something was wrong with me. I went through primal therapy for 2.5 years. I had spent my entire life, even as a child, if only people understood, if only I could explain, if only I could make them understand, they would love each other. And I've been wanting to, quote unquote, save the world since I was born. And so after my divorce and several love affairs, I went on my spiritual quest. I bought a Volkswagen camper, quit my job, and headed off. I took some holistic health training classes, and I headed off to teach Touch for Health. And wherever the engine broke or the axle broke, I lived for a couple of years, and I have lived with more than 50 places in the Western states that I can remember. And I went to Santa Fe to take a master's degree in holistic healing, and the school went out of business, but I loved Santa Fe. And okay, so I don't, a lot of this is kind of scattered. I'm trying to put it together for myself because what's happened is I got old, and I never expected, first of all, I didn't expect to live very long. And it just never occurred to me that I would get old. And I came back to Oregon. I've lived here 3 times before. I lived in Colorado, New Mexico, lots and lots of places. And Oregon felt a little more like home, although nothing felt like home, really. It just felt, oh, maybe a little safer here or something, more like home, and more like a place where I could be in poverty and still survive. And so I've been very isolated for a lot of years. And then I just made a big shift and started trying to connect. I live in a mobile home park, a trailer park in Medford, and it's mostly very elderly people. And it was really a shock. I don't feel like an elderly person, but most of my neighbors feel like elderly people. And it has been amazing because I've come to love them, and I'm getting very involved in caring for them, which I never expected. I mean, I am a natural born social worker. I was a social worker for a while in Los Angeles, South Central LA, and in aid to the totally disabled. But I'm not able to discuss anything like what we're talking about in this class with my neighbors with any connection. I mean, I can tell them what I'm doing, and they quickly change the subject. So, but okay, so I don't know where I was going to go with that. I took a class, an OLLI class, Capitalism, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in September. It was my first OLLI class. And was waving my arms. I got all excited. I was looking for a key to understanding what's going wrong, or a key to how to make a difference. And out of that, I started a group, and there are about 7 of us from that class who are meeting twice a month at the library in Medford, and we're calling it Solutions. And it's open to OLLI members. And it's just a discussion group. And each person in the group has their own focus. But we met together because of common concerns about all the things maybe that we're all concerned about here, like the poverty, the homelessness, hunger, food waste, violence, anger, the isolation, the lack of civility in public discourse, water scarcity, resource depletion, climate change, plastic pollution, everything. It's like everything. And so each person in the group has their own focus, and they're working on in their own directions. But we're finding a real value in meeting twice a month and just sharing. And it's absolutely, we just listen to whatever's presented. We had determined from the very beginning, no ranting. The rants have to be confined to about 30 seconds. And then we can focus on positives. And we began collecting stories about positive things that are being developed in engineering or science that are clearing up pollution or various things, increasing the solar power, pulling water out of the air, things like that. And I am finding that a little empty now, because we can talk about it, but okay, it's not anything that I'm doing anything about or that I'm involved in. And the other thing that we do is we hear what each of us is doing, and we just give our feedback. We listen respectfully, which I think is the most important thing that we're doing. I don't know that I've ever been in a group where no one is trying to convince anyone of anything. And we just listen. If we have something to share, we share it. If we have suggestions or contributions, we give them, and then we move on. And so anyway, I'm finding a lot of value in it for myself. I am having, I appreciate a lot of the things that you have said about grief, and also about spirituality. I'm kind of, personally, at first I thought I was looking for a project, something that I could put a lot of energy into. And I tried a couple of things. And really what I'm doing is looking for something intangible. I have been doing a lot of spiritual study, listening to a lot of different sources and reading, and for years and years and years. And I'm finding that I believe a lot of what I have been studying. It has become incorporated into my being. And I'm looking for this intangible. There's something that I'm trying to find that's a key for me to all of this. I don't think we can change anybody except ourselves. And
He's frozen.
I love everything you're saying, and just in the very last sentence, you froze here on my screen, at least.
Mine too.
Mine too.
Okay,
Mine
it's great
too.
because we're all sitting here in great. This is wonderful, and I'm in personally, and I think we all are in great suspense for whatever the rest, because what you're saying is so great. So I don't know what. Maybe you'll just pop back, or maybe you know something to do to get. There you go. You're unfrozen.
okay, I don't, what happened?
Doesn't matter. You're
So
here.
Yes, well, nothing happens by accident. So does that
Oh.
mean I should shut up at this point?
No, it does
Um,
not mean that. Not, no.
Okay, all right. So I don't
So
know
let me
if
let
I
me just say
mentioned,
what caught my the last thing you said that really caught my. I'll focus the question a little bit. When you talk about that group, I figure, fine, let's all quit this and let's just all join your group. So, I mean, it just sounds wonderful, and I love the way you're placing it as in some way, you've been looking for a community experience to share. What caught, but not but and what caught my interest, you were saying, and there's something else you're looking for. And you said that in some way that's intangible, but there's some kind of a key that you're searching for and don't quite have your fingers on. That's what I heard anyway. So, and that
right,
really got me interested because that feeds right into, you're already in a wonderful group. Where might we be able to help with finding a key, or whatever it is?
right. So I think that this group, you're asking what do I expect to get from it? This is why I signed up for this group, is because of the other group that I'm in.
Yeah.
And okay, so for me, I'm doing it. This is me, my process that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I want, okay, there's spiritual, uh, the observer, the witness who is not sucked in, who's not involved, the personhood, my ego. I am so pulled in. I care about everything, and it's all important. It's all very important. But the witness is a state of consciousness where you're observing it, but you're not drawn into it. And so I've got these two segments of my being that are not put together properly yet, because
Perfect.
I don't believe that quote unquote enlightenment means that I leave the body. I'm still here. So were that to happen, how do I put this together? Because the person is totally sucked into trying to, like, I think it was, I've forgotten your name, Byrne, that is to save the world, and it can sound so, I want to facilitate movement. I don't want to make anything happen. I want to create the freedom and the opportunities and clear the pathways for things. So I don't know. I don't. I have a lot of the things that I have. Everything without exception comes only by your individual attention to it. I think this is true. I think we draw things into our lives by what we're focusing on. It may just be an energetic thing, like the polarities, and you pull things into your. But I believe things. I'm looking for this. I have tried to say in our other group that if we don't buy it, and if we don't buy that we're powerless, if we don't buy what we're being fed in the news, if we don't really believe that that's the reality that we're living in, then we've disengaged from it, and we have taken a lot of its power away. It doesn't have any power that we don't give it. Those kinds of things. So I'm looking for ways to work with those kinds of ideas energetically to shift the universe. Thank you very much.
Wow.
So,
Okay. First of all, I'm not surprised to find myself sort of breathtaken by the depth of the folks we got here. Okay. It feels like a riches and is exciting to me. But the other thing is, what you're talking about is really right up my alley in terms of what I'm trying to work on and what I'm hoping we can work on here. And you know, I'm this is not an introduction. I'm just tempted to take a little piece of my Give me a second here. You know, I did a training for this grief group that I run for people who are not therapists but want to be facilitators and witnesses. So the concept of witness, I also do a thing called authentic movement, which is about witnessing. So the concept of witness is a very rich and important concept to me. And how to be both deeply involved and immersed in life and all its juices, and at the same time to be in some ways a witness and receiver of what's going on. And a big part of being so, for instance, young therapists are kind of told, don't let it get to you. You're going to listen to a lot of awful, painful shit, and don't let it get to you. Build a wall, have good boundaries, don't take it home. Now, most of you probably are sophisticated enough to know that that's a recipe for burnout, because we don't get to shut ourselves down in one little realm and then expect to be fully alive and open when we get home. So what a real healthy boundary for a therapist is to be, and to handle two poles here. And one is, and this is what true witnessing is, I think, therapeutic witnessing is when you, one, are utterly transparent to the pain and feeling and emotions that the person you're witnessing has. You're not holding them off. You're not saying, oh, thank God that's not me. You're utterly resonating with it. And you are utterly yourself, and you're not confused about being that person. You are witnessing pain. So in the grief group, I'm facilitating a grief group of people who've lost a close person to suicide, and most of them one of their own children to suicide. So we're talking about unimaginable grief, the kind of grief that I don't even want to think about for a second. About if you talk about my son, you know, my God. So let me figure out where I'm coming here. So what a real boundary is that you can listen to someone else's pain, but you know it's their pain and it's not you. That you completely are moved by it and care about it, but you're not confused that it's you. And how you do that is by a sort of dual witnessing. You're witnessing them, and this is the key, you're witnessing yourself in the presence of their pain. So you are witnessing yourself and you're being yourself. And that's what a real boundary is. A real boundary is not holding up a wall. A real boundary is being so deeply in touch with yourself that you don't lose yourself even in the presence of whatever's going on, which in this case is unimaginable pain of another human being. So that dual process. And that means, so part of what I'm hoping we'll offer here is having a deeper access, having your witness, being a better witness, which means having a deeper access to your own selfhood. And that ultimately means having access to the deepest part of your selfhood, which is not your ego so much or whatever, but the part of you that we'll talk more about that, but to be able to resource the deepest part of your selfhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, much more to be said on that, but I want to say that, and so how do we access the force of life in us, the more than personal part of us that resources us and feeds us, so that we become manifestations of that, and are rooted in that and resourced by that, at the same time that we are caring about life, committed to life, trying to be effective in making changes in life, or in the case you're talking about, just take in another human being. Anyway, so it's very rich what you brought up, and I'm excited about it. I'm hoping we can. I think we can
Let me see.
participate in that. I'm going to mute Jim for the moment.
Thank you.
He can unmute himself. Wait a minute. There we go. Yeah, okay. I don't think anyone else is muted. Viva, you're muted. Do you want to be? Okay.
No.
This is great. Isn't this a fantastic bunch of folks here? Next.
Well, my name's Peggy. And can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wondering. This is the first time I've been able to attend the class, so I didn't know that this was all going to happen today. So basically, we're talking about our lives and kind of like what we're going through and how we're connected to everything.
Can I want to ask, yes is the answer.
Okay.
But did you get the tapes, the videos of the first two classes?
No.
Well, let's make
If
sure
I did, I didn't.
Well, check it
Yes.
out and give me an email if you didn't, because then you'll just sort of know the context, the intellectual context of the class. And so there's sort of an intellectual structure for it. There's building community, and there's supporting people in personal practices that help resource us for living in these times. And so, yes, what you said, that is what we're doing today.
Okay. I think I did get them. I've been away. I've been out of town, and I get so many emails every day, and I didn't look at a lot of them.
Well,
I
you've been
get
lost.
overwhelmed.
You've been lost in the bamboo forest.
That's right.
Thank you for emerging.
And same with mail too. I get so much mail every day. There's so many groups that need money and are struggling, and it's overwhelming.
So the emails from this class are entitled "Belonging to each other and the planet."
Okay. Okay. Let's see. So, anyways, I'll just talk about me a bit. Let's see. I was raised in Virginia, Arlington, Virginia. My dad was an Episcopal minister, and his brother was too, and his dad was the Bishop of New York. Anyway, my parents got divorced when I was in 6th grade, and everything kind of got very different and stressed. And anyway, I went to Colorado for college, and let's see, after, I guess, I'm 71, my second year, halfway through, I guess there were lots of people who were demonstrating about different causes, and I was into demonstrating, and so I think school was closed. I think it was the war, I guess, Vietnam War. And so that was my last year of college. It was my second year. And then let's see, I became a secretary. I think typing was the most important class I took in college, in high school. And for every year for many years until I moved to Ashland. I had a different job, and I lived somewhere else every year. I just kept switching around. I was a follower for a while of Guru Maharaji. You all remember him? And let's see. Oops. Let's see. And these guys here.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Dolly.
Where is it? If you can see.
I see the Dalai Lama. What's the other one?
Let's see. Can't come up. Do you recognize him?
Yes.
Yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
On, yes. And this guy here.
Oh, I know.
I can't think of people's names these days. So, but anyway, all these people really inspired me in many ways. And but when I came here, see, anyway, I was pregnant. And so we got married, and I had gone to nursing school. So I worked at Rogue Valley Hospital, and I retired about 10 years ago. And we had the same house that we moved here and bought from that time. So everything really settled down for me here. And let's see. I've loved Ashland. I felt very blessed here. Let's see. I just got back from visiting my daughter in Petaluma, and I've got 2 grandkids. And they're really amazing. They're like almost 2 and 6. And let's see. One of the things that I'm really taken aback by is just how, humans have, if you fly away from the earth, you get to see all this light. People are everywhere, and this light.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the dark, you mean?
Electricity.
Yeah.
And I think of all the animals and creatures that used to have their areas to live in, and we put all these like concrete. And then I go out and, I pull weeds, from my garden. And I think of the poor little creature, the weeds that I'm pulling away. And yeah, I just, I think the Dalai Lama would kind of say, I don't know, it's all in God's hands, and we just need to do our best job that we can do with our inner wisdom and that sort of thing. So sometimes it just feels like we're in a Twilight Zone episode. And so every day I kind of just look up and kind of try to take it in and, appreciate the present moment the best I can. Anyway, I guess that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Lovely.
Where did you go to college in Colorado?
University of Colorado in Boulder.
That one were the CSU. Yay, Tulagis.
Anything more what you might get out of this?
Well, I just love the name Belonging to the Planet. I just feel like we all belong here, and we're part of it. And, when we breathe, it affects everything else. And So I just really appreciate connecting like this and talking on this deep level with other people.
Yeah.
Like what's going on. And I really appreciate too, just I've noticed over the last couple of years when I walk around in town and I meet somebody on the street, you can just almost start talking to anybody and people are open to connecting. You know, it's like they sit there and they really connect with you instead of, oh, no, and they're off, not 100% of the time, but I think we're all have gone through something very deep and moving and appreciate each other on a very deep level.
I had a physics teacher once when I was in high school, actually, and he took us to the swimming pool. And we're all standing there, and he's trying to explain how everything we do affects everything. How, when you breathe out, it affects the whole world. And most of my class wasn't having it. And he said, okay, now I'm going to take this pebble, and the pool is completely flat. And he threw it out in the middle of the pool. And of course, the waves came. And it's made so much sense, but that's always stuck with me. Like, yeah, that's the way it is. Only this is us in the sea of the world.
I wanted to say two quick thoughts. Colorado's come up a lot, and until I was 10, I lived in Colorado. In the 50s, they were precious. I mean, you knew all your neighbors. You ran in and out of each other's homes. Nobody locked their homes. We played football across the whole block, skied down our streets, and we can't bring that back. But how can we build that sense of safety and comfort and happiness again in other ways? And then the only other comment was, I dated somebody, a meditation teacher who met the Dalai Lama, and this is kind of relating to what Viva said, that, we learn and we integrate these ideas of, of living and enlightenment, et cetera, in our life. And then I think that does spread out, and it becomes the all of everything there is. And my friend that was with the Dalai Lama said, when he talked about it, there were no words. He was like a light bulb, just having been in his presence. He said that's so that, maybe there's nothing concrete, like I went and passed on a meal to someone that I think's really valuable too. But he said just the presence, being in the environment with the Dalai Lama, and he was really, he was speechless. It was just, he said it was the most incredible experience of his entire life. So I say that the choices we make and we do each moment do make a big difference. Big ones, if you think that you're too small to live the next day after you got bitten by a mosquito. Like little teeny impact can be a big thing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from Kate too, but I feel so inspired and grateful today so far with everybody sharing intimately who you are, where you are.
And I think we can each save the planet a little bit each day in our own way. Do something where we can be kind to someone else, or plant a tree, or plant a little bush or something out there, or look at the flowers and enjoy them. I think that's kind of saving the planet, just knowing that our environment here is so beautiful in Ashland. And I think one of the things I always say is you can be who you want to be, and you can be who you are when you live in Ashland. I don't think you need to put on a facade. And I think that's one of the great things about living here. Of course, being retired, it makes a difference than if you were in business. That might make a little difference, but you can still be who you are at all times.
Okay. Thanks.
I can go next if no one else is going to go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First, I want to apologize. I'm having trouble with my vocal cords, so hopefully they will hold up and you'll be able to hear me.
Hear you
My
fine right
name's
now.
Callie. Good. My name's Callie, and I grew up in Orange County. I left in 1978 when it stopped being rural and became a city. And I moved to beautiful Bend, Oregon, which had less than 10,000 people. And when I moved to Bend, all my neighbors came over and introduced themselves. And then about a week later, we had a street party so everyone could get together and know everyone. And that's my idea of a good place. And that's what my priorities are about. That's why I lived in Bend. I never made any money. I still don't have any money, but there's things that are much more important than money on this planet. And those have always been more important to me. One of the things is nature, and I could get from my house to the national forest to a waterfall in 5 minutes, which I cannot do here. I live in Talent right now. It is beautiful here, but Ben got way too crowded, so I moved to Talent, and then Talent burnt down in the fire. So we didn't lose our house, thank goodness, but a lot of it went. So anyways, I'm definitely an ecology minded person. I've been very involved in permaculture. I do something every day to help our planet by not eating meat. I don't know what else to say. I would have joined Earth First had I not had little kids. And maybe it's good I did have little kids because they're all in jail now. But I do believe that the trees need someone to stand up and speak for them. And I would be willing to do that, although I don't want to go to jail. And I took this class, I guess, kind of to find some more community, although I do have some here. I moved back to Talent when I retired, which was right before COVID. And then since then, I've had these health challenges. So it's kind of been a little bit rough road for me. But I'm looking for community and for ways to be active in helping our planet.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Kali.
No. I'm Kate, and I'm not good at taking turns politely, so that's probably why I wound up last. Peggy's one of the first people I met when I moved to Ashland in 1999. It's lovely to see her here. I grew up in northern New York near Canada, very rural, very isolated. My father was running the family farm until I was in high school, and then he got a government job and started wearing a white shirt to work and a jacket and tie and gained 30 pounds. And I knew I had to get out of there. My parents were both only children. I was an only child. It was the 50s, it was and 60s, those togetherness families of 3 to 5 kids playing together all the time in the neighborhoods. That just wasn't our reality. We lived 1 mile out of town. My mother didn't drive. And I started to find a peer group a peer group of one once I got a bicycle. I could suddenly go to a friend's house and she could come to my house easily without asking our mothers or fathers to give us rides. And that changed life a lot. And I went to college 200 miles away and started to find lots of people I could be friends with. And that was really great. My parents both died young, and I had some disappointments in personal relationships when I was young. So I was alone for a long, long time. And I met a nice man when I was in my early 50s, and he lived here. So that's why I'm here. We were together until he passed away 4 years ago. And I wish I'd been kinder to him. I wish he'd been kinder to me, but we had a good foundation. And he was a lovely man, beautiful blue eyes. And
You got a picture there nearby?
on the other floors of the house, I do.
Okay.
In here, maybe another time.
The blue eyes got me, so.
Oh,
Anyhow, I don't consider myself a very spiritually evolved person, in contrast to having spent 18 years either in credit bearing or audit situations in universities, mostly credit bearing, as a student, and then having worked in colleges as an academic librarian for another, better part of 30 years. So I saw the academic, the intellectual perspective. I'm so used to that. Step back, not to protect yourself and say, oh, I'm observing this person in pain, but to step back and say, okay, I'm just waiting to see what the data tells me. And you put it in boxes, you slice it, dice it, classify it, put it together, take it apart, draw conclusions, knowing you're going to be ripped to pieces by your colleagues. And coming from that world to a more spiritual place, or the volunteer sphere where people try to get something done, whether it's restoring a piece of wilderness, an tract of wilderness, or helping people get food when they need it, or making music together, or putting on a church service. And I've been involved in things like that here in Ashland, all of them. I think that's just so different, where you need to be another kind of person than the one who can look at the statistics and the survey questionnaires and make something out of it that will be attacked, but make it somewhat defensible. So putting away all that defensiveness in the rest of life is pretty important for me. And I think it's important to work around politics right now, because
Work
anything
what?
that's perceived
It's important to
around
work
politics.
around politics.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we're so divided.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I come from a household where my parents split tickets.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, we lived in New York State, where, frankly, we had some good liberal Republicans 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we shouldn't have mentioned the party, but
No, there's no restriction whatsoever on what we're allowed to talk about here. You could choose to or not to, but yeah.
And my folks were subject to a little, all right, white privilege, comfortable lower middle class, but a little microaggression from most of their neighbors, who just presumed, of course, you're going to vote for Nixon. And now things aren't like that. I have two stepsons and families, and we all love each other, but boy, they're right wing, very right wing. One rationality took him there, and another religion took him there. And
So these are stepsons you're talking about?
Yeah, they don't live around here.
Yeah.
But well, I'm working on maintaining those relationships.
Yeah.
With,
yeah.
kind of talking about politics, but someday I'd like to be able to tell them, I'm in this anti-racism group at my church, and here's what we're reading, and here's what I'm learning from it, without being just shut down and say, oh, you're one of those woke people.
Yeah.
And the name they call us woke is another name. And I'm thinking
being awakened is an insult. I love that.
It's an insult. Yeah. So I've learned a little more history that wasn't in the textbook.
I'm noticing we just have a few minutes left. Not to shut you down, but just context.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if I could just add one thing.
Yeah.
I just bought a book by Derek Jensen, a well-known environmental activist, that's called The Myth of Human Supremacy. So I want to work all the supremacies.
Yeah.
And I'll just close with that. That's
Lovely. So this has been great. And give me a second, just writing a note here. So the one or two of the classes is going to focus on what I've been. Kate, are you gone? Can you hear?
I have to plug in my laptop.
Okay.
Before you, what was the author of The Myth of Human Supremacy?
Derek Jensen.
Derek Jensen. Thank you. Sorry, Bob.
So one of the a couple of classes that address you were talking about making the transition from sounds like you were saying what felt like the handcuffs of rational data scientific that approach and moving to something very different. And I'm very interested in the integration of those. And so one of the classes is called bridging the mistaken polarity or divide between science and spirituality. And so that I think we'll be addressing some of that. And what is a view that includes matter and spirit as respectable co-creators of the world, co-factors in the structure of the world. Yeah. Well, this has been lovely. And at the same, I expected this because it's been true of every one of the classes I've done before. But as usual, I'm like, wow, look at these folks. My goodness. So, and there's also 3 or 4 people who told me that who had interesting messages that I was going to share, but I don't have time now. And then they'll get a chance to listen to this tape and to introduce themselves. So this we'll keep this moving along. And there's lots of responses I had to some of the things that people said, and I've sort of made notes on those, and those will happen down the road. But there's a major piece I want to do on grief, and resourcing ourselves. And then I want to also offer some practices about how to just and some of you have done a lot of this and some of you have not maybe, but on how to meditate in basically how to access the actual physical, not some spiritual off somewhere else, but physical manifestation of life as it manifests in you, and how to be resourced by that, how to rest in it, and how to have that be, how to experience yourself as a manifestation of that. And that is a contrast to the early political movement I was in, where it was all about struggle and effort. And I think we get into a really hard part when we feel like, boy, we messed up the world, now we got to fix it. And finding out that we as humans and as individuals are not going to fix it. But nature has a powerful ability to heal itself. And if we allow ourselves to be manifestations and let nature resource and express itself through us, we may be invited by nature to be part of the solution, just as the slime molds and the mycelium and the trees and everything else. That all of us, we can be part of the forces of nature and members of nature that get recruited by nature in its healing of itself. And that's a non-narcissistic way of looking at what our role can be, and a way to have something to rest in, to do our best, but to know that we are not in charge of the outcome, the ultimate outcome, that's above our pay grade, that will be taken care of by larger forces than us. And we still have responsibility for ourselves, but not for the whole thing. And among the common views that humanity has come up with, one is, the view that all of nature was made for us and is there to resource us, you know, and that we're essentially we're the kings of the universe, and all of nature was just a stage that was built so that we could do our performance on top of it. That view, and therefore it's ours to at best use as a resource, and at worst to exploit and extinct and genocide and whatever, right? So that view, we're above nature, we're too good for nature. But the other view, that we're the bad seed, we're the matricidal bad seed that's ruined everything and that will ruin everything, there's a way in which that's also an inflated view. And another inflated view, which is very, you know, if only we were gone, everything would be fine. That's also narcissistic in the sense of being self-important about our role. And another one, which is very tempting, in which there's a healthy version of, is we made the mess, it's our job to fix it. And it is our job to fix as much of the mess we created as we can. But we didn't make, it's not, we're not responsible. We didn't make this happen, and it is not on us as a species alone and separate and above everything to repair our damage. So we're neither above nature, below it, nor ultimately responsible for it. We can be expressions of it, and the more we can find that looking for that place, and this speaks a little bit to what you were talking about, Ruth, I think that's the place where I think I can be both an activist and a witness, or whatever language you want to use for that. So we've got to talk a lot more about all of that. I, by the way, am not a very punctual or time person, so I'm always willing to go over, but I feel a responsibility as the leader to pay attention to the time, and but I'm happy to chat a little longer with anyone who wants to, except that I don't want us to talk about stuff that other people will.
I'm gonna say bye. I gotta get up and move.
Yeah, get up and move. All right.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure.
Thank
and
you
an
so
honor,
much.
folks.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to meet everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.